Welcome to Nurturing Our Roots from Slavery to Freedom live Zoom session with Antoinette and Karen. We are live every Tuesday at 7 o'clock Central Standard Time, the talk show where ordinary people with extraordinary family stories come alive. If you have a family story that you would like to share with us, please contact us at nurturingourroots@gmail.com. I'm Antoinette. Now let me turn you over to Karen.
Hi,
Hi,
everyone.
Karen. How are you?
Hi, Antoinette. Good to see you. Uh,
Likewise, likewise.
yes,
Well, it's your turn. You got the mic now.
I'm looking forward to our topic tonight. We're going to be talking about cemeteries and how we, as descendants, are maintaining those cemeteries where our loved ones are buried. Do you even know where your loved ones are buried? I know I recently found out that one of my two times great grandmother is buried right near me, and you know so many people don't follow the traditions that past generations have followed with going out to clean the cemetery and just keep them, our family's grave members, our grave sites maintained. Many of our family members don't even have headstones. And maybe that's something families can get together and do and start making sure that there are headstones on those grave sites. And so, if you are in our chat room, feel free to continue the conversation. Let us know if you know where your family members are buried, and feel free to share your own family stories. And of course, you could ask questions while you're in the chat room, and we'll do our best to answer your question on the air. And we look forward to interacting with you, um, not just today, but beyond. So if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, please make sure to subscribe. And that way we can see you every week and you can see us every week.
All
So
right. Okay, Karen, thank you for that introduction about what we'll be talking about tonight. Karen, it is so important that we really talk about the importance of maintaining our cemeteries as well as placing headstones on the graves because we do know that a lot of times um, our cemeteries now, many of them are neglected. And so we really want to talk about why is that happening? What can we do to avoid that? And how did we come about that unwanted behavior that we have? I remember growing up in a church as a little girl, there was always the cemetery committee. And the men in the cemetery, the deacons, most of them was deacons, they would get together and they would maintain the cemetery, whether they was washing the graves, whitewashing the graves, or cutting the grass, or making sure that the cemetery was maintained. But today we don't see that. And so we have to go back and reclaim that part of the history and the legacy of maintaining the cemeteries like we used to do it once upon a time.
I did not grow up with a tradition of going to the cemetery. We only went,
Mhm.
sometimes the children would go when somebody died. But I realize now that a lot of times as children, we were not even taken to funerals when people died.
Uh-huh.
Uh, I remember some of the older people, they would go out on All Saints Day and, put graves on loved ones'
Mhm.
grave sites and stuff like that. But I could see how it could get lost in families because I
Mhm.
know that for me, it just wasn't a part of my family traditions.
And we have to make sure that whatever we do is part of one taking the young people. It's like intergenerational. You know, you just said it wasn't part of something that you all did coming up, and so it wasn't something that you made to be a part of your family. But
Hmm.
my mother always took us to the cemetery to place flowers, to wash the grave, to paint them her parents' graves. And in the meantime, she would always tell little stories while we were around the cemetery around the graves. But I do have a couple of photographs that I would like to pull up just to show you. And I want to thank my friend and my colleague, Walter Black, because what he did, he helped me to make uh, some of the headstones. There was so many, Karen,
Hmm.
that we just could not afford to purchase all the ones on the cemetery.
Oh,
So what he did was he went out and he purchased this little baking pan. That's all it was. And those are the alphabets that children would use to learn their alphabets. And we
Oh,
use that
wow.
for the alphabets. And we just put the date the person was born, when they died, and the name of the person.
That's simple. That's easy.
It was because we had so many people that was deceased. So if I could, if you don't mind, let me just show you something else, how he used that as, okay, oh, here it is. Something everyone can really see sort of clear. All right, here it is. All right, can you see that, Karen?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a simple baking sheet and the
Wow.
alphabets. And that was better than not having anything at all.
That is really smart.
And so, and for the women, and because like the women, I found the little girls' Boritz, and I pressed it into the cement, and I made little flowers for the females, for the women.
Mm-hmm.
But that was better than not having anything. So it did give a name, his birthday, and the day that he died, the year that he died.
Now, how did you get it out of the pan after it comes out easy after the concrete dries?
Yes, what we did, we basically used like some cooking oil.
Oh.
And just made sure that it was like enough of, and it came out really easy, Karen. It was nothing complicated.
Because I know expense is one of the reasons a lot of people don't put headstones on the grave sites. And so I'm sure that didn't even cost $10, $15.
No, it didn't, because the one bag that we had, I think we got about 15 out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And matter of fact, I still have some that needs to be placed on the graves right now.
That's a great idea. Even during COVID, I think we could get out the cemeteries.
Yes. And so I just want to, and there's a couple of other pictures I want to show you. And I just want to thank everybody for their patience, because let me tell you something, when you operate in the board behind the scenes, but the most important thing is the message that we're getting out. That's all.
Absolutely.
And this lady here I just have so much respect for Miss Johnson, because she was the one who found these abandoned cemeteries. This is in St. Helena, and this was abandoned cemetery. And there's many abandoned cemeteries, but we did find a lot of headstones on these graves.
That's amazing.
Yes, it is.
Wow.
She took me to the first enslaved cemetery in St. Helena.
So that looked like it's just in the middle of the woods.
It is. It's in the middle of the woods. And here is another one I want to show you. Just everybody, just give me 1 minute. All right. Now this one, the one I'm about to show you now. Okay. This is of my maternal great-great-grandparents. And look at Amanda Richardson, the wife of Tom Richardson. And so looked like they had some means of getting the headstone on the grave. She was born April the 6th, 1862.
Wow.
And died September 24th, 1937. And that is in Rocky Hill Cemetery. And that cemetery is maintained all the time. So I do have like a video I would like to show of just a quick one of Mrs. Okay, I'm about to. I'm learning. All right, here we go. Got it. Karen, can you see it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can.
I'm just gonna go ahead and just bring this back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You want to curve here, watch the boys on the street.
That is Brother Kojo Livingston.
Oh, Kojo. I remember
Yes.
Kojo. Oh, I miss Kojo.
Now, I had 2 legs, and look at that, just pulling my dress, huh?
Maybe that's the best outfit for where you went.
Well, look, Karen, I'm going to tell you, Look, when I thought about our ancestors going through the woods with dresses on, look, I just had to do what I had to do.
All right.
Yeah, yeah.
Whoa.
You know, those woods, I'm sure that wasn't as grown up when the cemetery was placed there, but before
No.
the cemetery was placed there, our ancestors had to go and clean that out and make it into a cemetery.
It's even worse now because that's been now Kojo was living, and it's been 10 years I've been an amputee. So you know that's been over 10 years. It's worse now.
So there seems to be some consistency to the way those headstones are made.
You
So
see that, right?
maybe somebody associated with the family, associated with the church. That was just something they did. They made those headstones.
Right. But we spent some time documenting that cemetery in St. Helena, but there's a lot of them. And Miss Johnson, bless her heart, she would try to get a lot of these cemeteries. Listen to this interview.
MYRTIS JOHNSON.
Okay, and where are you from?
I'm originally from St. Helena Parish, born in a little town called Liverpool, Louisiana.
Okay.
That's about 7 miles north of Greensburg.
All right.
On Highway 43.
Okay. Now, why are you here at the Hidden Cemetery?
I'm here because I started in 2002 with the cemeteries. We're doing a genealogy on my father's side, and I saw how their cemetery looked, and it was really, really bad. So I said, I'm going to try to find some help to get it cleaned up. So I ran into Mr. Joe Day, who was the warden in Greensburg jail, and he gave me some inmates to go up and to clean it up. And he also told me about a slave cemetery that's off of Highway 38 on Pipkin Road. And we ended up identifying 2 slave burial sites in there.
Wow. And
we marked them with stones from Jim Stone Company in Baton Rouge, donated to Stones.
Wow.
And we marked those burial sites.
All right.
Slaves.
All right. Now you started an organization.
I did. I have saved our graves in St. Helena Parish.
Okay.
Foundation. Save Our Graves Foundation.
Right. Why is it important to find these graves, to mark them, to identify them? What value is that to us?
It's a lot of value, and it's going to be a lot of value. Maybe it's not so much to us these days, but I want to record and preserve this history for our descendants. Because I'm finding out that more and more African Americans wants to know where they came from.
Yes.
And they're doing their genealogy. And one of the first places that the genealogists would tell you is to go to the cemeteries, because there's a lot of information on the headstones. Okay. When they were born, the year, and all of that information. And then you can proceed to do other research.
All right. What are some of the outstanding things that stand out in your mind in terms of what you found from doing this work?
I found that Louisiana had the largest importation of slaves in the nation.
Wow.
And that St. Helena Parish was next to New Orleans in slave importations.
Wow.
And I found also that there are many, many, many slave cemeteries that can be located and to be preserved.
Okay.
It's just a matter of going out there and looking, and by talking to people.
All right, Karen.
Yeah.
That was a lot of information. That a lot of cemeteries are out here. Now, I had forgotten where that cemetery was on Pippins Road and 38. And just because she mentioned that right now, I can find it right now. And that was a lot of our enslaved ancestors was buried in that cemetery.
Wow. And so she mentioned that you could learn a lot about who's buried there because it has their, a lot of times birth dates and death dates. But the reverse is true as well. Sometimes if you don't know where your people are buried, find that death certificate, and usually down at the bottom, it'll tell you the name of the cemetery where they're buried.
So true, so true. Karen, what can we do to stop the neglect of cemeteries?
Well, I really think it has to be information, especially as I told you how it wasn't a part of my family traditions, uh, to pass that forward. So as we're getting into subsequent generations, people oftentimes don't know that it is the family's responsibility. People think you pay for a cemetery plot, and the people who own the cemetery is going to take care of it. But so
Exactly.
part of it is education, letting people know that, okay, Big Mama gone now, and it's on us to take care of the family cemetery. Y'all know she used to go out there and take care of it, so now it's on us. So I really think we have to make sure we educate people.
And I also want to say that this generation now is totally different. I find what the elders did back in a time, we don't see the elders doing that today. It looks different. The whole picture looked totally different.
Well, we are the elders.
Well, that's what I'm
one
talking
of the oldest people left in my family, although one of the oldest women left in my family.
Well, that's why I say the elders today, it looks different, because I can go back and think about some of the families in Africa, around the world for that matter. A lot of people keep with their traditions of things, and they keep with the family legacy. We break it so fast here, and I think what I have found is that a lot of the elders do not carry themselves like elders. It's almost like a childish mentality, not wanting to be the elders. But what is the responsibility of the elders? Because the children are going to follow us. They're going to do what we do. They're going to emulate what we do. And so I get tired of passing by other ethnic group of cemeteries, and it's maintained. You don't see a lot of the graves without the headstones. You see that it's maintained. We must do better by our deceased, loved ones.
Absolutely.
We must.
Hey, Antoinette, I just want to let people know, I see we have people in the chat room, but it appears that there's a problem with posting comments to the chat. I just want to let people know we see you.
Okay.
And, if you have a question, you could go to our Facebook page, Nurturing Our Roots on Facebook, and put your question there, and I'll check the Facebook page for any questions.
Okay, and so they're having a time with that. Let me just see if there's anything that I can do.
It just says that there's an error posting the message, and so I could see that there are people there. I just, if someone was, they may be having the same problem I'm having. I normally post a welcome welcome to Nurturing Our Roots, and it just won't let me do it. But
okay, so you're having a hard time.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna look
at technology.
Yeah, I'll monitor Nurturing Our Roots on Facebook, and if there are any questions, I'll make sure to bring them up.
Okay, and also, so that's why, and thank you, Karen, for that. That's why it's so important that we have these type of discussions, because I'm embarrassed by the fact that we are not maintaining our cemeteries, Karen. Really, I am. And I hate to see that. And for some reason or another, Karen, I'm having a hard time just trying to get it on Facebook. So if there's any question, Well,
I was just gonna put a comment on there saying if they have any questions to on this particular stream here, post stream, I'll keep an eye on it.
And so back to what we're talking about, it's just too many times I am seeing people in the graves without a headstone. And that's the one thing that we have to do better by.
Right, we have to. And it begins, like I said, it begins with education and letting everybody know that, okay, it's our job. It's our job to do it.
Yes,
And
yes.
so,
Nobody else's job. And so
right,
I think one of the things that we could do is bring the children with us.
right. I've never taken my children to a cemetery outside of when their grandfather died.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm guilty.
And
I'm guilty.
that's okay. I mean, but we have to do better with not neglecting those that really paved the way for us. Um, a lot of times people have said that their family members have said, once you put me in the grave, I know this is it. You forget all about me. You forget about everything. We're losing too much. We're losing not just our cemeteries, but those values of things that should be important to us.
Mm-hmm. And even though we have COVID, you could definitely do social distancing at a cemetery.
Exactly. And you know what? And we're seeing more of cemeteries, funerals on the side of the cemetery now than we have ever seen before. So that tells us right there that, okay, this is a new day. This is a new time. So we have to do better things in maintaining the cemetery. Any questions so far at the chat room?
No, they're not going to show. They're not showing up in the chat room. I just tried to post on the Nurturing Our Roots Facebook page.
Okay.
I put a link,
can you see the show on Nurturing Our Roots? Because I'm having a hard time just trying to get it there.
Right. I made that post and that post didn't show up. I don't know. It looks like the internet gremlins are coming after us tonight.
Yes. So if you can go to Nurturing Our Roots YouTube and you can post it on Facebook, I can go ahead and you tried. It would not let you.
Right. I copied the link and I made a post and I don't see my post there. Do you have to approve the post?
No, I do not. Mm-hmm. Okay, everybody, just bear with us. We're trying to get past it. But
I'm gonna just try posting it again.
Okay. In the meantime, I don't want to break my concentration of really educating and talking about something important, because you can always go back and post later. But what I have to say about the cemeteries are, we got to do better, people. We must do better. Go to the cemetery. If it's a church cemetery, it is the responsibility of the church to maintain that cemetery. Find out if there's some annual fees that should be paid by the families of those that is in the cemetery to help maintain the cemetery. And if it's a private family cemetery, there should be a meeting between the family members if you have to create a calendar of events. And if one person is responsible for it this year, then who's responsible for it next year? I think that's what we should do. And we should always incorporate the young people because as we get older and we cannot do it any longer, we must pass the baton on to the younger generation to maintain those cemeteries. That is very, very important. Another thing that we must talk about in our families is, if we are going to set aside the money for the funeral programs, please discuss the headstones in that meeting too, because first of all, a lot of families do not like to talk about the final arrangements in our lives, but it's a necessity that we do that, because to me, it is saying that your family is carrying on the torch like they're supposed to. When I go to a cemetery and I see a grave with no headstones on it, it's a reflection of the family. If you have to start a family jar, get a jar, put some money in it, this is for this headstone. This is for this headstone. We're going to buy a headstone at the end of the year. Now, I will show you once again, we had so many graves without a headstone in the Harrell family. I took it up on my own to have those headstones made by Walter C. Black. Now, The reason being is that my grandfather Jasper made sure that his brothers and sisters that was buried in Amet, Louisiana had headstones. Now, let me give you an example. I know one family member, a great uncle. He has about 100 grandchildren, great grandchildren combined. And a lot of them are adults. Now, when you think about that many people can contribute $20 for the headstone for a grandfather, you know, what is $20?
Right.
You spend that every day on trivia things. So to me, it's just not a good thing. It's not a reflection. It's not a good reflection on us to do those things, Karen, is what I'm saying.
And in addition to it being a respectful thing to do, think about future generations that you will never know. They will appreciate having that information about their ancestors because, you know, there's the date of death, date of birth. Sometimes people put who the wives were, who the husband was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this is such a simple way to do it.
And I just had to share this again for everybody that's just coming on. It's a simple baking sheet with the alphabets, you know, simple plastic alphabets. And I didn't push them deep in there. I pushed it enough that I can get it out of there when it dry. And this is for my uncle, my uncle. And so that's simple. This is better than nothing. And some of the headstones, what we did, we put them on top of the grave because what I found in some cases, the graves would, let me see if I can, yeah, okay. I want to show everybody this picture again, just in case. Okay, here it is. What we did, we put it on top of the grave, like so. You see that? We cemented that headstone on top of the grave. And I went out there about 6 months ago. They're still there. And this is Palmer Harrell. This is my grandfather and your great grandfather's brother. And because he played such a major role in my life, teaching me about agriculture, I just hate to see him lie in that grave without a headstone.
Now, some graves don't even have that cement box around the grave. So I guess you would have to make maybe a thicker base.
Yes, to place it there. Yes. But, and also too, when you think about doing that, you can also have like a little cement block built and place it up on so it won't sink in the ground.
Because you know, without ground, it's like it gets soft with a good rain.
Yeah, that can happen. So I just couldn't take it anymore. You know, it wasn't a criticism to anyone. It was just a call to action. You know, I just felt like that's what my ancestors, they was worth a headstone. It was worth a headstone in their grave, you know. And so I am embarrassed by the fact that we are neglecting, you know, we're breaking like it's like a sacred circle. We're breaking that. And we have broken that.
Well, it's always the opportunity to start over and get it right.
That's right. And that's why we have Nurturing Our Roots. You know, and Nurturing Our Roots from Slavery to Freedom is all the discussions of not just researching your family history, but also those important things that needs to be discussed about family history, you know, things that many people grew up in a household not discussing a lot of things. But in order for us to sort of reclaim or to start looking at, okay, we got to do this differently. Although our ancestors, our family members didn't talk about it, we got to talk about it. You know, we have to talk about dying. We have to talk about what happens. We have to talk about the plan. You know, what is the plan? Why are we afraid? Are we afraid that we are going to die tomorrow if we talk about this? That thing called bad luck, That's crazy. That's not the way to embrace that. I love my family so much that I don't want to put them through any unnecessary pain of looking, of searching, trying to figure this out. What am I going to do? It's hard enough when you lose a loved one. So, let's just look at what could we do? Have you talked about where would you be buried at? Is that the cemetery that you want to be buried in?
Well, I know that you took me to see our Harrell relatives
Mhm.
in the cemetery next to the church. And in many cases, uh, back in the old days, the family pretty much went to one, everybody was buried in that one location. That's not the case now. So
No,
some
it's not.
people may have to do a little bit of legwork to find out where their people are buried. Think about what were the churches that your family uh, your family members attended over time, and are there cemeteries attached to those churches? Because I live in the city, and not every church has a cemetery attached. And in
Mhm.
fact, most of the
Exactly.
churches don't have cemeteries attached to them. And
Mhm.
so you have to do a little bit of research within the family to find out where were your family members buried. I know my family members are buried in various cemeteries across New Orleans.
Right, right.
But how
Carrie,
would the next generation, how would my granddaughter know that if I don't pass?
exactly, exactly. Karen, I have placed 11 headstones on graves in my lifetime
Mm,
because I'm a genealogist and because I love them so much that that's dignity. You know what? That's the word I want to use for that. It's self-respect and dignity. You know, it's an honorable thing to do. And it make you feel like, well, I'm doing the right thing. And it feels good to do that.
mm-hmm.
It's just like I couldn't have it any other way. And that's why it's important for us to, I know it's a very difficult time right now, but maintaining our loved ones' final resting place should be a part of maintaining anything else.
It should be a part of your genealogy work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And family discussions.
Mm-hmm.
Make a field trip with the children, the grandchildren, nieces and nephews, and just go to that grave. And because if it's a family member that the children of the descendants may not know, they get to know that person through you.
Mm-hmm.
When you tell them why you are doing this and say, your aunt used to always make sure that every holiday or whatever it is, she didn't have any children, but she made sure that all of her sisters and brothers who had children had enough food and clothing and things for her nieces and nephews. And that was our Aunt Bertha. She didn't have any children, and she lived in Chicago. And my grandfather, your great grandfather, and our great Uncle Palmer would always get these care packages from her because she knew that her children, her nieces and nephews, that her brothers and sisters had a lot of children. And so she contributed to those children. And so that aunt and uncle who did not have children, they became like that surrogate parent. And it's
Mm-hmm.
our obligation too to look after them, to take care of them as well. You know,
Absolutely.
it's just it. And in the African standards, this is what we do. And we're breaking some very sacred grounds that we shouldn't be breaking. You know,
Well, it's on us. It's on us. And when you know better, you do better.
right. And I think that after some people hear this show tonight, they will make it up in their minds to do something for their deceased loved one. Um, when my mother passed last year in March, um, after my mom passed, about 3 weeks later, I called my brothers and we had this meeting. And after I contacted the person who was responsible for making headstones, and I picked it, he brought a booklet over to me. And I think I chose like 3. And I sent it around to my brothers, and they all voted on which one. And whichever one.
Where where would someone even begin to even learn, how do I find somebody to make a headstone?
Well, you can consult with the funeral director when you go to make the funeral arrangements. You can ask them about headstones there. And all of them have someone that they're connected to. If they don't make them themselves, they're connected to a company that makes headstones.
And so if I have an insurance policy, will the insurance policy also cover that?
Well, no, the insurance policy did not cover that. We just made sure that whatever we did, it was enough left over. So what you can do when you know that you have an insurance policy and how much that insurance policy is, that's the first thing. Well, I want to make sure that we stay right within that frame line of what the insurance policy covered. That was the one thing that all 4 of us agreed on. And the reason for that, this was the time that COVID had just came out. I didn't want my brothers responding to emotions, let's do this, not looking at the expensive things, because my mother was gone. She wasn't going to come back. And I know my mother would not have wanted us to go all out the way with these big expenses, and we don't know what everyone was facing. But we stayed within the compounds of the confinement of that policy. And what we had to do was add some out of our own pocket to cover the headstone. But it was divided 4 ways. And so that was, it wasn't a great expense. And so I tell people all the time, do it now, because when someone else die in the family, then that expense it increases for the ones that's left behind. So we was able to, I got my mother's headstone put on within 60 days after she was deceased. And that was completion for me.
And that's really, and that was a really, really pretty headstone that you.
Thank you. That was completion for me. And that was completion for my brothers, because I felt like once we go back to the cemetery and the headstone is not there, well, that's incompletion. We got to go back to the table. We got to finish this. And that's what I call the finalizing of everything, is when you put that headstone on the ground.
It does offer a certain amount of closure. I know my father-in-law, he's in a mausoleum. And so that's, they engrave it on the granite, on the thing, the part that they close up. So
that is a closure. And so the reason I like to talk about things before is because when you have to face that moment and that time, you're already in pain, emotions are running high. It can be a very hard time. So to talk about it beforehand is always important. I want to say, I never had that conversation with my mom. We never had that conversation. But I was really happy that when that time came, we was able to come together in peace. And that was the one thing too, because I find that could be a simple thing as choosing a headstone can turn into a big issue. One, price, set your budget. What's your budget for the headstone? And make sure that when you contact the person who's making a headstone, let them know that you're working within a budget and you do not want to go over this budget. And if we have to go over this budget, set that budget price to go over that budget. Because headstones can be very expensive. Can be very expensive.
And then once you place the headstone, like the gravestone that you guys made, over time, you have to go back and make sure it's not all filled with mold or mildew or moss or whatever that green stuff is that gets on concrete, right?
Yes, my brother Michael is very good at going back once a year and wash the graves. I don't see that's something he's been doing for 20 years, I know.
Oh,
And
good.
so, yeah, and that's because he picked it up after my mother doing that. And so I know when it come down to my mom, he would do the same. And so I was really happy to see that not only did we do that, but we also had to get the cement foundation hold around the vault to keep it from sinking. So um, I am the only female in my family. So, and I'm the oldest. So I was happy to see that my brothers was very cooperative, very. The only thing I had to do was tell them that this is what I have found. It wasn't, I didn't choose everything. I did let them choose whatever they wanted to choose as well. We just worked together. And that's very important for families to realize, work together, you know, um, do not let the loss of a loved one divide the family up. Let that be the bridge that bring the family together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's very important, you know. And we would not, the four of us wouldn't have had it any other way.
Are there any particular kind of products you should use or should not use?
Yeah, it really is, Karen. I have never professionally had it done, but I think that just simple soap and water, you know, is the safest, you know, to put on the headstones or to clean it, you know. That's just the simple, but there's a lot of websites that people can go to look at online as to what to do to clean the headstones, you know. That's very important. And you know, sometimes in the public cemeteries you see a lot of headstones that's broken. That's because the groundkeepers or the lawn care people, you know, they go through there, they don't really care, they'll knock it over and that kind of stuff, you know. I do know that we want to put a vase on my mother's on the platform. But I do know that I want to buy a professional vase that belongs in the cemetery so that if somebody's weed eating and you know a rock hit it, then it won't crack or something like that. So it, you know, give a lot of thought into those things, because if you're not maintaining a cemetery yourself, and if it's not a private cemetery, you know, now I do know some of our family members have private cemeteries, and they're, you know, there's someone in the family that maintain those cemeteries. But if it's a church cemetery and a public cemetery, it's more up to the church and the public, you know, the town to keep it up.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it costs us to be buried in those cemeteries.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And it costs to open up the gravesite and all of that.
All of that. And all that needs to be taken into consideration, you know. But the most important thing is, I want to say to everyone, please, let's do a better job at maintaining our cemeteries and, you know, making that final place a beautiful resting area. You know, like you go to some cemeteries, there's a bench, there's beautiful oak trees. Now you have to be careful at planting trees and shrubbery and bushes, because sometimes the roots can get under the grave and it can damage the vault. So I would not recommend planting anything that can damage the vault, your family's vault, and the one next to it as well.
Earlier, you showed the video of the cemetery that was out in the woods. It was a slave cemetery. And, you know, every now and then I come
That one wasn't, but she was talking about another one.
Oh, okay. Because I know I come across different articles. I saw an article today about a slave cemetery underneath a building at one of the major universities. And I know that, you know, in a lot of the rural areas, you'll see a field, and then off to the side, you'll see a cluster of trees. And oftentimes you go over there, you'll find a lot of grave sites for people who were enslaved, usually on the plantation that was near that area. And I found myself stopping on the side of the road driving, especially along the River Road, just outside of New Orleans, I would see a little cluster of grave sites. I'm like, let me go pull over there and see who's buried over there.
Mm-hmm.
Just out of curiosity, I'll do that.
And Karen, when you think about it, my mother was such a neat person, and she always liked things kept very clean around her. And when you think about a person in a final resting place, that should reflect that person's way of living, you know. And so we should think about, they can't do anything about those surroundings, but we can.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have to think about, is that the place where I want to be? Is that the place that I want to be buried? And I often say, I don't want to be buried in any cemetery that's not going to be maintained. I just can't do it. I'd much rather be cremated than to be in a grave where, in a cemetery where, you know, there's holes everywhere. Some of the graves are sunken in. You can't even walk there because you don't know if you're going to fall into a hole and break a leg, or come up on a bed of snakes, because that has happened.
Oh, I have been in some cemeteries that have been
Yes.
just disgraceful.
Yes, it's disgraceful. And so we must do better by our deceased, because we must think in terms, our children will do worse to us, because first of all, they don't even have a connection to the cemetery. They don't have a connection to anyone that's in the cemetery. So why should that be a concern of theirs? You know,
Well, they don't know. We got to teach them.
we have to teach them, you know, and it has to be, and I find too, Karen, there's some things that money just can't buy. Dignity and respect.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot buy. And so those are the things that we must put the most valuable, place the most value on, because there's no money that can buy it.
You know, you see a lot of people raising money for funerals.
Mm-hmm.
And I sometimes wonder if they think about even the burial aspect of it, the putting the headstone on the gravesite.
Most likely
there isn't
not, because
money.
if they, let me tell you something. This is what I always say. I do not contribute to those type of causes, simply because the younger a person is, the less expensive the policy is.
Mm-hmm.
And if a person can go anywhere, buy anything, do whatever they want, they should sacrifice to purchase a policy on themselves and the family. You know, that is something that we have never done in our family, and I don't intend to start.
Mm-hmm.
You know, although our people had those little policies, paid their whole life, but it still was important for them to have that.
Yeah, my
And
grandmother
so,
paying. I remember the insurance man coming to the house,
mm-hmm,
and they would give out. She would go get her change, and
that's
she was
right,
paying change on those little policies.
on those little policies. And so we are in a better position than what they have been. And
Mm-hmm.
out of all due respect for us as people, we must place our priorities in the right place. And that's simple. That is, so I don't, now, if it's something that I know a person was doing everything in their will, they just couldn't make ends meet, and they was just having a hard time. But no, if you can get your hair done, you can get your nails done, you can do this, you can do that, you can go and get yourself, make that type of arrangement. You know,
Yeah.
cut back on the cable TV, cut back on the iPhones, whatever it may be, but just make sure that that's part of your family portfolio, is to have your business affairs in order. And Karen, we learned this from our family members. I think that I looked at my mother do it. I mean, her mother and her father, you know, people always dealt with things in an adult way, you know. My grandfather, once again, he made all those headstones. And after my grandfather died, he was out there so long without a headstone, I couldn't take it anymore. So when I became an adult and I just put a headstone. And I told my mother, I said, Mom, don't worry about it. I'm going to cover you.
That's something. He was making them, but I guess he didn't think about pre-making one for himself, huh?
Well, I just thought that he would just assume his children had means to make sure that he had a headstone.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was it. But he made sure that his mother Emma, his father Alexander, his grandfather Robert, his brother Arthur, his brother Elliot, all of them had headstones. Theodore, because he made them. And that's why those headstones are very historical to me.
Yes.
Because I'm looking at my grandfather's handwriting. And my mother said she remembered him making the headstones, and he told her not to touch it because she would break one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And she touched it. And she
no.
the very thing you told her not to do. I said, oh my, why did you do it? He told you don't do it. I said, you just had to go and just test the water, huh? But that's the way that it is, Karen. And we have to really, I'm grateful for this show. That this is a show that we're not only talking about finding genealogy, but we're talking about those things in between,
Mm-hmm.
Caring for the antiques in the family, that quilt collection that we'll throw away so quickly, grandmother's old photo collections,
I looked at my photos today, Antoinette. I said, you know what? Because I have some that I got from my mom's house.
Uh-huh.
And I see I have some in this file cabinet next to me. I have some over here. I said, you know what? I'm gonna get one big old box and put all of these, because of course I have photo frames all over the place. I have photo albums on the bookcase. I have photo albums at the bottom part of my coffee table. But for all these that are up in my office, I said, you know what? And some of these are the ones that I got from my mom's house. I need to put all of these in one place.
Yes.
I've digitized a bunch of them already. But even just for right now, between now and tomorrow, they need to all just be in one place. I got boxes around here. So that's, but like I said, caring for all of these types of things, because those are important parts of our family history.
Right. And our history, like we are losing land, we're losing our cemeteries, we're losing property, we're losing so much, and we won't have anything to hold on to if we keep losing. So I'm very happy for this discussion that we're having tonight. And we're sorry that there was some type of technical difficulties where people could not respond.
Yeah, I think it's probably a YouTube glitch because it's not just me. Whenever I try to post, it says posting error, but nobody else. Normally, when I look in the chat room, other people are posting and their comments, but we see you. I just want people to know that we see you, and thank you so much for being here. But it is obviously a YouTube glitch.
Yeah. And I do want to mention that next week we have a very exciting show, Karen. We're going to be talking to Free Bob's descendants. Free Bob was a former slave who purchased his own freedom and that of his children. And he purchased 1,700 acres of land, and he gave each one of his children, 17 children, 100 acres of land. And that land is still in their family today. That's right. And they still are living on that land. And the town is called Vernon Town. So we're going to be having some of their descendants, some of his descendants, join us. And one of the things I'm very happy about, Free Bob was married 3 times. And he's going to have children from descendants from one of his wives meet each other for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Right here on Nurturing Our Roots.
That's
and
really,
the second half of the show. So because we have so many people that want to share information, the second half of the show, so we may go over an hour next week, you all, just maybe about 15, 20 minutes. We're going to be talking to a young man and his son. Well, who drives around Mississippi, and he's come across all these plantations, and he's going to be sharing with us some of the information and some of the plantations as he's finding in Mississippi. So I'm really excited, just to hear what he found.
Yes, yes. That does sound exciting. Being here in Louisiana, we have so many patients. It never even occurred to me to start looking for some in Mississippi, which is just right next door.
It's
so
just right next door, especially because our family has ties to Mississippi and Louisiana.
So many ties. We may have as many ties to Mississippi as we have to Louisiana.
Exactly. So please join us next week, and the show will be up. And look, place your comments in the YouTube comment section after the show, and I'll be sure to, Karen and I, we both will respond to you. But once again, please maintain the cemeteries. Your loved one graves is your responsibility. Grandparents, parents, it's our responsibility to do that, because you know what? We all got to go that way one day. And you ask yourself, is this the cemetery that I want to be buried in? And think about that, because I tell my family all the time, my husband and my children, look, do not put me in a cemetery that is not going to be maintained. No, I'm getting up. If I can get up, I'm getting up. I'm coming to somebody going, because I told them, it's like, wait, I told you don't do that.
That's what at this very moment, the comments started working in the chat room.
What did they
okay. All right. So we have someone says, yes, love this, ladies. You are beautiful. Someone else said, love this conversation. Thank you. Cemeteries Hutton and Ken's Gems. We are so sorry that it took the whole show long before YouTube will let our live chat start to work. But
yeah.
But if you have any questions after we go off the air, the comments will be turned on on the program, and you can certainly leave your questions there. But I just saw something pop up there. I'm like, oh, the comments are not working because I've been trying all along.
You know what I find, Karen? I find that when you have something so important to talk about, there's always some type of energy trying to stop it.
Those
but
gremlins.
You just gotta get over, because this message will make somebody realize, or help someone to realize, that there's something important. Our ancestors, remember now, our ancestors, we owe it to them. We owe it to them to honor their life legacy and that final resting place, to make it beautiful, peaceful for them,
And they want us to tell their stories.
That's right. That's part of the dignity of our family and the respect. When a family is known by, families used to be known by certain characteristics, and certain things that made that family be the type of family that they are. And all you would have to do is say your last name, and that family would know, people would know, okay, yeah, I know who that family is. So you want to have those upstanding values. Once again, that's what make us royal, not the material things, not those trivial things that has no meaning at all. But what give us that royal thing is know what we are doing to keep our family together, to strengthen our family. Because in this most challenging time that we are seeing, it is bringing families together, checking up on one another, making that phone call, making sure that we check up on the elders. That's what our family members did.
That's what my mother-in-law, 96 years old, she talks to family members almost every day.
Every day.
She doesn't do social media and all that stuff, but she was talking on the telephone.
But Carrie, remember there was a time they would go and sit, and if a lady or somebody was sick in the neighborhood, the women would go and cook, and they would sit around the clock. They would take turns. You know, if something was going on and somebody's house needed to be repaired, the men in the neighborhood got together and they did those things. We got to go back, as Sam Cofer said, go back and fetch the best that the past has to offer us.
Yeah, so that we could go forward.
We can go forward. Well, co-host, close us out for tonight, and thank all of you. Karen and I do apologize for the glitch, but you got the message.
Yes. And so thank you. Thank you again, co-host. And I'm looking forward to our show next week when we're going to be talking to Free Bob's descendants and
Yes.
the young man who's been driving around Mississippi. So next week's really exciting. Thank you, everybody in the chat room. The chat just came alive a few minutes ago. I will see what I'll try to answer a few more questions as we close out. But we are here every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. Please hit subscribe and hit the notification bell so you could be notified when we are going live. And comment down below. Make sure you give us a thumbs up if you enjoyed this broadcast. And we will see you